Hi again, this is Jeff, your ProtoPie expert answering your ProtoPie questions. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Normally I answer your questions, but today I'm going to answer my question. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with ProtoPie School, but it is a set of short articles and videos that get you up to speed with all of ProtoPie's features really quickly. There's a link in the description below if you want to check it out. One of the tutorials is how to use the camera layer and camera response. And what it does is it gives you a really quick demo, and I've got my phone mirrored here so you can see how this works. It shows you how to start the camera, so that way you can use the camera on your phone. It shows you how to switch between the front and rear cameras. And it shows you how to take a picture. And it just simulates taking a picture by freezing the video here. And while this is great, this shows you exactly how it works, it's not a fantastic camera app experience. It's not very believable. So my question is, can we make this better? Yeah, we can. You're going to see when I run this here, there's not a lot of feedback going on. When I take a picture, the video just freezes. And we do this by stopping the camera. There's nothing to really show us that a picture has been taken. And also when we switch between, let's reset this, when we switch this between the front and rear cameras, you're going to see it's just a jump cut. It'd be nice if that were a little bit nicer. Let's tackle the feedback first. Let's make it look like there's a flash that happens when we take the picture. So instead of it just freezing, let's have it flash up white for a brief second. So in our pie, let's add a rectangle shape here. I'm going to add it above the camera layer. I'm going to make it white. And I'm going to position it in the top left corner and stretch it out so that way it fills the whole screen. And let's set the opacity to 0. Now before we move on, a couple of housekeeping things that we should do here. I just created a rectangle that is supposed to represent the flash, so let's rename that flash. And also I have two triggers here, both called tap and both with a response called camera. At a glance, it's difficult to see the difference between these two. Now I can click on it and figure that out by looking at which layer it's associated with, but it would be nicer if these were named a bit more clear. So let's change this to tap switch cam, and we'll change this one to tap shutter. It's a good habit to get into to rename all of your layers and responses, especially as your logic starts to get a bit more complicated. Having all of your triggers and responses called opacity, move, tap, and that kind of thing, it starts to get really messy on trying to figure out exactly what does what. So get into the habit of renaming your triggers and responses. So in our shutter here, when I take the picture, I'm stopping the camera. Let's add an opacity response to the flash layer. Turn the opacity all the way up to 100, and I don't want this animated. I want this to happen immediately when I tap the shutter. So let's change this to 0. And then I want it to fade back down. So we'll go to opacity again, and still on the flash layer, set the opacity to 0. And this I want animated because I want to see the fade. But 0.2 seconds is a bit fast. I'm going to change this to 0.5 seconds. So what should happen? We take the picture, the video will freeze because we're stopping the camera. We'll go full white over our entire screen, and then that white will fade out back to our camera image again. Let's see how that looks. So let's take a picture here. And there we go. And we got that flash happening. I'll reset it here again so we can see it. There we go. That does what we want. Now our second problem here is we can only take one picture. Once we take one, that's it. You can continue to tap the shutter button, but you'll see my camera, and I'm moving my phone here. You can see the camera is not actually active anymore. We need to turn the camera back on after we've taken our photo. So let's do that. We're going to add another camera response. When we take the picture, we stop the camera. Here, let's restart it again. This will be on the camera 1 layer, and I want to start, but I don't want it to start right away. I want to be able to see my photo for a split second here. Let's drag this out, and my animation of the flash happens after half a second, and then after that I'd like to be able to sit on the photo for another second. I don't want to restart my camera until about 1.5 seconds. So what we can do is we can put a delay on when this response fires, 1.5 seconds. Now if we run this, now when I take a picture, you see we get the flash, and now my camera resets, and I can move it around again, and let's say I want to take a picture of the car here. All right, we're starting to get a bit more of a believable camera experience. Now, one thing that pretty much every camera app has a sound effect of the shutter button going click. And You can see, and you probably noticed already, I actually have a shutter button sound effect already in the Pi here, and I've just got it off the stage here. It doesn't matter where you have it, it just has to be somewhere on the stage. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to play that sound. Now you'll recall from other Ask ProtoPie videos that I've done that when you want to play a sound over and over again, you need to reset it back to its start. So we're going to use a playback response on the shutter sound effect. I'm going to seek to 0, or the beginning of the sound. And then I'm going to use another playback response to play that sound. All right, now if we run this, we should be able to hear the shutter click. There we go. All right, very cool. Something that a lot of other camera apps have as well is the image it scales down into the bottom corner as if it's about to go into your photo library. Let's do that too. Let's simulate that same thing. What I'd like to do is I'd like to scale my camera image, the frozen camera image, down into the bottom left corner. Now what I want to do is I want to scale it down to the bottom left corner. If I set my origin point to the bottom left, that makes my scale really easy because it will scale relative to that point. So on the camera layer, let's set the origin to the bottom left, and we're going to add a scale response. Scale, select the layer, will be the camera layer, and I'm going to scale it to a factor of itself. So it starts at 100%, but let's scale it to 25% of its original size. And let's stretch out our animation so that way it matches the 0.5. So you can just stretch it out on the timeline here, or you can actually dial it in. So if I wanted to do 0.5 here, you could do it that way as well. But when you're dragging it out on the timeline here, it will snap just to other items that are in the same set of responses here. So it's snapped easily to that 0.5. Let's run this again. I'm going to turn the sound back on so we can hear the shutter click. Now when I take the picture, there we go. It put the picture down in the bottom corner. You can see though, it's now reset my camera and I'm just still stuck in the bottom corner. So we want it to go back full screen again. You'll also notice that our image it's cropped down by the rounded corner of the device itself. So let's also have it such that it scales down to an inset position of about 30 pixels from the left edge and from the bottom. So we'll fix both of those two things here. Let's add a move response. And again, because I've set my origin to the bottom left, I can move it relative to that bottom left very easily. So instead of a move to, I want to do it on the camera layer, not on the shutter button layer. I'm just going to do a move by, and this will move it relative to the position that it's currently at. And I'm going to move it 30 pixels to the right and negative 30 pixels in the y-axis, which means 30 pixels up. Okay, let's run that. I'll turn my sound back on so we can hear the shutter button here. Okay, and there we go. It's now inset 30 pixels from the bottom corner, so we can see the whole image. When the camera starts again, though, what we'd like is the image to go back full screen again. So we need to undo the scale and the move for when we reset the camera. Let's do another scale response. And we want to scale the camera layer, and we're going to scale it again by a factor. And by default, ProtoPie just gives you 100%. Let's just leave that where it is. I don't want this to be animated. I want this to happen immediately when the camera resets. So let's set this to 0. But I don't want the scale to happen right away when I take the picture. I would like it to time it for when we reset the camera over here. So our start delay for that is 1.5 seconds. Then let's change the start delay for the scale back to the same thing. We also need to move it back to fill the whole screen, because right now it's inset from the bottom left corner by 30 pixels. So we also need to add a move response. Same thing, camera, and I'm going to reverse my move over here. So it was 30 on the X minus 30 on the Y. Let's do, I want to move by, first of all. Minus 30 in the X and positive 30 in the Y, exactly opposite of what we did here. And again, I don't want it animated, so I'm going to set the duration to 0, but I am going to delay it for when the camera resets, 1.5 seconds. We also should adjust our animation in this first move. Right now it's at 0.2 seconds. We should stretch it out so that way it matches. Okay, let's run this again. Yeah, let's see how this worked. Let's turn on the sound. Let's take a picture. We have our shutter, and then we go back full screen and the camera's ready to take another picture. Okay, that's our picture taking experience done and dusted. Now what we need to do is let's add a little bit more pizzazz to how we switch the cameras. So if I run this again, and we take a look here, when I switch cameras, and I just hit the switch button, it's just a jump cut. It'd be nice if this animated in 3D space flipped around to, hey, you can see me in the camera there. So it would be nice if this animated in 3D space, if it just flipped around as we switch the cameras. So look, we can do that. ProtoPie has a 3D rotate feature that we're going to make use of for this. So when we tap the switch cam button, we want to 3D rotate. And we are going to 3D rotate the camera layer. And I want to rotate it. You can choose this first one, which rotates from right to left. I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees. I'm not going to do the full 180 degrees. And we're going to get into why in a second. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, and then I'm going to do another 3D rotation of another 90 degrees to complete it, so that way we get the full 180 degrees. You're going to see why I'm splitting this into 2 rotations in a second. So let's run this on the camera, and let's flip it around. Okay, now you're going to see, let me reset that for you. You're going to see that when I hit the switch cam button, it's swinging away like a door. We don't want that to happen. Now the reason why it's doing that is it's rotating around the origin that's set for that layer, and that's the bottom left corner. Now we need that bottom left corner for our scale and move when we take a picture, but we don't want the 3D rotate to happen around the bottom left corner. We want it to happen around the middle. Now luckily, when you use 3D rotation, you can actually override the pivot point. So by default, it uses the layer's origin point, but we can choose a custom item here. And instead, I'm going to use custom right in the middle, and that's what it defaults to, but you can set a bunch of different items here by clicking little boxes in this grid, or you can even dial in some numerics here. And this is a percentage from the left and the top side. So if you click right there in the middle, it's going to put it at 50%, 50%, or right in the middle. So if we run this again, and we do our flip, there you go. Okay, so it's rotating around the middle, but it's only rotating 90 degrees. I now want to complete the rotation and do it another 90 degrees. So I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to do that with Command D or Control D on Windows. And let's just move our animation here. And much the same way that you can stretch out the length of the animation, you can adjust the start delay by just dragging in the middle here. And I'm going to move it so that way it happens at the end of the first rotation. So let's run this again. And now we see it, and we get our complete rotation. But you can see what the problem is here is it's doing the rotation, but it's not switching the camera until after the rotation is done. This is why I split this into 2 rotations, because what we want to do is we want to delay this until after the camera switch is done. You will notice, let's just turn these off for a second here. You will notice that my camera switch there's no delay on it. It happens as soon as you tap the switch cam button, but there is a bit of a delay for the phone to respond. So if I tap, I need to restart it here. So now if I tap, right, it's tap, switch, tap, switch, tap, switch. There's a bit of a delay. So we need to account for that delay. I know that the tap or the switch is taking about half a second to happen after I tap it. So what I'd like to do is I'm just going to delay the second part of the animation out, and let's just delay it half a second. So 0.5. See if that works for us. We should turn these back on too. Run this again. There we go. That does exactly what we need it to. And let's turn on our sound again, and we should be able to take a picture of me. There we go. And let's turn it around to the front, and we'll take a picture of this beautiful Audi model we have here and the tree of imagination. And there you go, easy as pie. What we have is a very believable camera app experience. If you run into a snag with one of your pies and you'd like to ask us for help, just check out the link in the description below. Thank you for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next video.